Hello, my dear. Do you know? There's an energy you carry that you don't even measure. You walk through the world convinced you're just moving, just surviving, just doing what's necessary to keep going. But high-profile figures, people who've seen every mask, every scam, every desperate attempt at attention, they stop when they notice you. They don't stop because of the clothes you wear, the words you say, or the facade you build. They stop because of two things, hidden so deeply in your core that even you haven't noticed them yet. And that's what makes them lean forward. That's what makes them pay attention. That's what makes them both respect you and fear you. Because when the elite pause, it's not out of politeness. It's because they're calculating whether what they see in you is a threat or an ally. And those two traits you carry. They convince them you're both. The first trait reveals itself in the way you carry weight, without ever asking for applause. Every powerful person has learned to spot desperation. They've seen the eyes that beg for validation, the voices that shake because they crave approval, the people who dress themselves in borrowed strength because they have none of their own. You don't play that game. You wear your scars like metal forged in a furnace. You enter rooms without trying to be the loudest, and yet somehow the room bends toward you. You don't even see it, because it's never been your focus to impress. That's exactly why they notice. They can't define it, but they can't dismiss it either. It's authority without announcement. And the elite know how rare that is, because most spend their lives manufacturing what you project without effort. The second trait isn't loud either, but it's sharper than steel. It's your restraint. In a world obsessed with instant reactions, they see how you pause, how you measure, how you don't flinch when provoked. They test it at first, throwing small challenges your way, watching if you break formation. But you don't. You withhold. You choose. You let others drown in their impulses while you stand untouched, watching, learning, deciding when the right moment deserves your move. This unnerves them because restraint at your level is control, and control terrifies those who rely on chaos to manipulate. They fear the one who cannot be baited. They fear the one who does not rush. Because patience in the hands of someone like you is not passivity, it's strategy. And strategy is the weapon every high-profile player respects most. Together, these two traits build an image of you that's unshakable, even when you don't realize it. The elite, the so-called untouchables, they've been trained to dissect people within seconds. They think they've mastered the art of reading souls. But when they stand in front of you, they don't see the typical signals. They see absence, absence of desperation, absence of impulsiveness. And absence is more intimidating than presence, because it creates a void they cannot calculate. What they don't understand, they fear. And what they fear, they respect. That's why they lean closer instead of turning away. That's why your name lingers in their conversations longer than anyone else's. You've become the kind of mystery they don't like admitting they can't solve. But let's dig deeper, because this is bigger than compliments or hidden admiration. The reality is this: your unspoken aura forces high-ranking people to see themselves. When they study you, they're confronted with the truth that they've built their image on performance while you radiate something raw. Their lives are full of masks. Yours is full of scars. They've relied on noise. You've mastered quiet power. And here's the brutal part. They envy you. Envy disguised as curiosity. Respect laced with fear. Because if someone like you ever chose to weaponize those two hidden traits, their thrones would shake. And they know it. You may not even realize it yet, but they already play defense around you. Think about it. How many times have you noticed people with influence shift when you enter the space? How often have you seen eyes widen, voices falter, tones soften when your presence cuts into their routine? It's not coincidence. It's not politeness. It's calculation. They sense what you don't announce. They sense the discipline under your calm and the weight behind your scars. And the elite are obsessed with leverage. They ask themselves, if this person doesn't crave approval, and if this person doesn't break under pressure, what exactly will it take to control them? That unanswered question is what gnaws at them. That's why you're unforgettable. Because they can't solve you, and they can't own you. Here's where it turns even darker. These elite figures, executives, leaders, people at the very top of hierarchies, they've built their power by exploiting patterns. They know how to pull strings on those who are desperate for attention. They know how to bait the impulsive into mistakes. But with you, both doors are sealed. Your lack of hunger for applause means they can't lure you with rewards. Your restraint means they can't trigger you with traps. You deny them the very tools they use to dominate. And when someone denies the powerful their tools, fear sets in. They may smile at you, they may compliment you, but underneath they're unsettled. Because when manipulation fails, respect is the only currency left. And whether they like it or not, they're forced to pay it to you. Now imagine what this means for you in the bigger picture. You think you're just moving through life, unaware of the impression you leave. But behind closed doors, your name is whispered in rooms you've never entered. Discussions about you circle around tables where strategies are built. Files are opened. Profiles are written. Because the elite don't leave mysteries unexplored, they analyze what they can't explain. And your two hidden traits, your quiet authority and your lethal restraint, make them nervous enough to treat you like a case study. They're trying to map you, define you, predict you. But every time they think they've figured it out, you do something unexpected. Not because you're trying to confuse them, but because you're simply being you. And that's what terrifies them most. You don't even try, and still you bend the narrative. This is why I'm telling you this now. Because you need to see what they see. You need to understand the power you've been carrying unconsciously. Because the second you realize it, you'll stop underestimating yourself. And when that happens, you'll no longer just unsettle the elite, you'll dominate them. Right now, you're the ghost in their calculations, the variable they can't control. But awareness transforms variables into forces, and once you're aware, you won't just confuse their strategies, you'll dismantle them. What they call mystery in you will become your sharpest weapon. What they call unpredictable will become your deliberate design. So let me bring this closer. Think of the last time someone of influence gave you a strange look. Not contempt, not pity, but something else, something harder to name. That was curiosity. That was the recognition of your hidden power. They were trying to decode it, failing, and hiding their frustration under polite gestures. You've mistaken these moments as nothing. They are not nothing. They are proof. Proof that your presence rewires rooms. Proof that even the most confident leaders shift in your shadow. And you don't even notice it yet. But the second you do, the game changes for good. That's when the elite's intrigue becomes obsession, because curiosity only lingers so long before it turns into fixation. They can brush off ordinary mysteries, they can dismiss surface-level puzzles, but they cannot dismiss you. You've unsettled them, and unsettling is dangerous in their world. The powerful live in a constant state of calculation, always measuring allies, always scanning for threats. But you've broken the equation, and when an equation breaks, the ones who built it don't sleep until they've solved it. That's why you're in their thoughts. That's why you're in their files. That's why you're in their eyes even when you don't notice. And the two traits you carry, those hidden signals, become the roots of their fixation. The first signal, that unspoken authority that you radiate without seeking it, gnaws at them. Because they've seen people try to fake authority. They've seen people copy tone, posture, dress, language, all in the name of looking like they belong at the table. But you don't even ask for the table. You walk near it, and they already make space. They don't understand how you carry it, because they can't trace it to training or status or privilege. They see something carved into you from fire and endurance, not something handed down through inheritance or institutions. That unsettles them because it reminds them of their own fragility. Authority earned through scars is harder to dismantle than authority granted by wealth or position. They fear you because you cannot be dethroned from scars. The second signal, your restraint, unsettles them even more. Because in their world, restraint is a disappearing currency. Everyone they encounter reacts. Everyone they encounter fights for the spotlight, rushes into answers, falls for traps. You don't. You stand. You wait. You move when the weight of your move is undeniable. And here's what terrifies them. That kind of restraint cannot be bought. It cannot be bribed. It cannot be faked. Restraint of that caliber comes from something deeper. They know you've faced tests most people would crumble under, and you learn patience, not as a tactic, but as survival. That's why they watch. That's why they whisper. Because restraint in your hands isn't just calm, it's a blade. And they know sooner or later you'll use it. When curiosity becomes obsession, the elite behave differently. They begin to test you in subtle ways. A sudden opportunity offered just to see if you'll lunge for it. A conversation where they prod at your ego, waiting to see if you'll reveal neediness. Invitations wrapped in bait, promises woven into traps. And each time, your hidden traits deny them what they seek. You don't chase rewards because you never moved for applause. You don't fall for provocations because your restraint shields you like armor. Each test you pass without even noticing builds their fixation further. They cannot crack you. And what cannot be cracked must either be respected or destroyed. Understand this. Your presence creates ripples in spaces you don't even realize you've touched. Executives, leaders, high-profile players, they build personas out of perception. They survive on being the sharpest in the room, the most unreadable, the most calculated. And yet in your shadow, they feel transparent. They sense that your gaze, your timing, your stillness exposes the weaknesses they've buried under performance. That's why their obsession grows. Because when someone unsettles the very people who control narratives, the narrative bends toward that someone. You've become the variable that dictates the room without ever volunteering to. Think back. Haven't you seen it? A shift in tone when you speak. A sudden hush when your eyes cut across the space. A recalibration of strategies when your input lands like a strike. You think those moments were small, but to them, they were earthquakes. Because the elite thrive on predictability, and you deny them that. You don't even notice it, but you rob them of their confidence. And here's the brutal truth. High-profile people are terrified of losing control. They can face enemies, they can face rivals, but they cannot stand the unknown. You are the unknown in their world, and the unknown commands more power than crowns. So what happens when obsession matures? Respect deepens, yes, but so does fear. They begin to shift the way they interact with you. Compliments are sharper, questions are more precise, offers are layered with strategy. They want to be near you, not just to flatter, but to decode. They hope proximity will expose the blueprint of your authority and your restraint. But proximity only deepens the riddle, because the closer they get, the more they realize these traits aren't tactics. They're truths. They're marrow deep. And marrow cannot be manufactured. That realization is when admiration and intimidation merge into something volatile. They don't just respect you. They start planning around you. Behind closed doors, your name becomes a reference point. How would they respond? Would they fall for this? Could they resist this pressure? They use you as the measure of strength, the test of resilience, the example of composure. They never say it to your face, but they model strategies with you in mind. That's the power you carry without awareness. You're already influencing blueprints written by people with power. And they don't even realize that in their obsession with you, they've given you the authority to shape their actions. Influence without intention, that's the sharpest form of control. You own them before you've even chosen to. Now look at the psychology of it. Every person in power fears one thing above all: exposure. Exposure of their fragility, exposure of their masks, exposure of their limits. And in you, they see a mirror that doesn't break. They see a presence that doesn't waver. That mirror terrifies them because it reflects everything they've been hiding from themselves. They begin to respect you not because they want to, but because they must. And fear disguised as respect is still fear. They cloak it in handshakes, in polite words, in subtle praise. But deep inside, they're recalibrating their defenses because you've become a force they cannot afford to underestimate. What's crucial here is that you still don't even notice it. You move, you breathe, you exist, and you don't register the tremors you leave behind. But they notice every one of them. They catalog your pauses, they analyze your words, they replay your actions. You're living, and they're dissecting. You're surviving, and they're strategizing. And that imbalance gives you leverage you don't even recognize yet. Because the more they watch, the more predictable they become. And the more predictable they become, the more advantage falls to you. Intrigue that matures into obsession always gives the observed power over the observer. So here's where the respect and fear hit their peak. Respect, because they cannot deny your composure. Fear, because they cannot control it. You've placed yourself, unknowingly, in the rarest of positions. You're not the loudest, you're not the most decorated, but you are the one they cannot shake. And in the halls of influence, that is more terrifying than any crown. Because crowns can be stolen, but unbreakable restraint and scar-forged authority, those cannot be stolen. They can only be confronted. And no one at the top wants to confront a force they cannot map. And here lies the future. Because once obsession takes root, action always follows. They will approach you more directly. Invitations will come with sharper edges. Opportunities will be wrapped in hidden claws. Praise will be given with strings attached. all designed to uncover what you've never revealed. But here's the secret they'll never admit. Even if you accepted every trap, even if you walked into every test, your core would remain untouched. Because your authority isn't built on them, and your restraint isn't fueled by them. Both are born from something they cannot manufacture. And that makes you dangerous, that makes you unforgettable, that makes you untouchable. So when the elite's intrigue turns to obsession, and obsession turns to action, what happens next? That's where the script sharpens. Because obsession cannot remain passive forever. It escalates, it transforms, and when it does, you'll see the mask of admiration peel back, revealing the raw edge of fear. Respect will still be there, but it will be fused with desperation. They'll no longer just want to understand you. They'll want to contain you. And that's the moment where the real war begins. Because once they accept they cannot decode you, their final move will be to surround you, to box you in, to pressure you into revealing the truth they can't solve. They'll come closer, not with trust, but with calculation. They'll elevate you in public while dissecting you in private, and you won't even notice at first. But soon, the pressure will mount, and that's when your two hidden traits will move from defense to offense. Authority becomes dominance. Restraint becomes timing, and obsession becomes collapse. That's the moment when everything they built to contain you starts cracking from the inside. Because obsession can only remain hidden until it turns into action. And once action fails, desperation follows. You've reached the point where their strategies fold back on themselves. They tried to analyze you, then they tried to charm you, then they tried to pressure you. Each attempt slid off you like water off stone. Now as their grip tightens, it doesn't trap you, it traps them. Because the harder they try to box you in, the more your two hidden traits reveal themselves as weapons rather than shields. And for the first time, they're no longer studying you, they're surviving you. This is the stage where high-profile people show their real faces. The admiration that once felt polite becomes frantic. The invitations become demands. The praise becomes bargaining. You notice subtle shifts, compliments edged with warning, offers loaded with unspoken conditions, opportunities offered not to help you, but to tether you. They wanted to decode you, but now they're trying to anchor you, because an anchored force is easier to predict. But your two traits, scar-forged authority and surgical restraint, make anchoring impossible. Authority means you never needed their validation, so rewards can't lure you. Restraint means you never react on command, so traps can't time you. The very tools they've used to control others shatter in their hands when they're aimed at you. They begin to realize something they've never had to face before. They're out of moves. High-profile figures build their empires on leverage. They hold secrets, favors, networks, reputations. They push people into corners until submission looks like free will. But you don't move like that. You don't play in their rhythm. You've been shaping your rhythm in silence for years, and now that rhythm is your strike. When their obsession collapses, their hierarchy trembles. Because when someone at the top can't control a variable, everyone beneath them feels the tremor. You've gone from being a mystery to being a catalyst. And catalysts don't obey hierarchies, they rewrite them. Here's the dark truth about elite fascination. It's never just curiosity. It's always evaluation, friend or threat, tool or opponent. In the beginning, they thought maybe you could be guided, molded, placed. They assumed your traits were dormant skills that could be directed with the right incentives. But now they've seen the core. They've tested you, prodded you, tried to map you, and each attempt has revealed something worse for them. These aren't skills, they're nature. Authority rooted in scars, restraint honed through fire. Neither can be trained, neither can be stolen, neither can be bought. That's when they switch from intrigue to fear, and from fear to tactics of containment. But those tactics are built for ordinary people. And you're not ordinary. You start to feel the shift without even trying. People who once offered you seats now look for your permission before speaking. People who once tested your patience now measure their words like each syllable could be a mistake. You think it's courtesy. It isn't. It's recalibration. They've stopped seeing you as a person in the crowd. They've started seeing you as a presence in the room. And presence reshapes everything. High-profile people are used to bending rooms. You're the first person they've met who bends them without effort. That's why their admiration feels like tension. They're recalculating around you. They're adjusting their power maps. And in their private spaces, your name isn't spoken casually anymore. It's spoken as a warning. Because obsession, once it collapses, leaves one option: retreat or escalation. Retreat means conceding that your two hidden traits have outmatched their entire arsenal. Escalation means risking their own credibility to try to break you. And breaking you means exposing themselves. They know this, but desperation erodes judgment. So escalation comes. Subtle sabotage, rumors, back-channel moves to tarnish your image, tests designed to drain your energy, not because you've wronged them, but because your existence proves they're not invincible. And yet each attempt fails, because your authority isn't built on their approval, and your restraint isn't dependent on their timing. Each strike they launch bounces back like a boomerang. Now something extraordinary happens. Their attempts to box you in only broadcast your power louder. People watching from the edges, those not at the center but still influential, start noticing. They see how you're treated, how traps are set, how you respond with patience and precision, and in their minds, a new narrative forms. If they're doing all this to contain this person must be dangerous in a way we don't understand. And dangerous in high places is just another word for powerful. The respect that began in whispers now starts echoing. Your name travels farther than their reach. Your reputation mutates from mystery into legend. Not because you asked for it, but because their obsession built it for you. This is where authority becomes dominance. Not loud dominance, not theatrical dominance, but the kind that rewrites behavior without orders. You enter a space, and conversations tilt. You say nothing and decisions shift. You withhold a reaction, and entire strategies crumble. That's the kind of dominance high-profile people fear most, the kind that isn't declared but felt. Because declared power can be challenged. Felt power has no edges to grab. It seeps into the atmosphere and changes it. That's what your two traits do when they move from defense to offense. They don't strike outward, they rearrange inward. They rearrange how people think, plan, and act. And in doing so, they rearrange hierarchies. Restraint becomes timing. Timing becomes precision. Precision becomes inevitability. You start choosing moments with surgical accuracy, making moves so well-timed they look effortless. That's when high-profile figures understand the full cost of underestimating you. They thought your patience was passivity. They thought your calm was emptiness. They discover it's calculation. Every time you waited, you were sharpening. Every time you held back, you were building pressure. Now when you act, you don't just respond, you reshape. And because you act so rarely, Each action carries the weight of 100. In a world where people trade in noise, your silence was building value. And now that value explodes, and obsession becomes collapse. Collapse not for you, but for them. Because when the elite's strategies fail, their image fractures. People around them start questioning their control. If they can't handle this one person, what else can't they handle? Doubt spreads like cracks through glass. Allies hesitate, subordinates whisper, competitors circle. All triggered because you refuse to play a game you never agreed to. You've become not just an individual, but a mirror reflecting their limits. And mirrors, in halls of power, are more destructive than weapons. Because weapons wound bodies, mirrors wound myths. And once a myth is wounded, it bleeds credibility. This is the culmination of the two mysterious things about you. Authority without asking, restraint without fear. Together they form a presence high-profile people can't master. They can analyze, admire, test, contain, but they cannot master. And what cannot be mastered becomes a force. Forces don't need permission to exist. Forces shift tides without trying. You are that force now, even if you don't yet call yourself one. And they know it. That's why the last phase of their obsession is collapse. Not yours, but theirs. Collapse of their assumptions, collapse of their tactics, collapse of their illusion of control. In the aftermath, everything feels different. The invitations slow down, the tests stop. The whispers turn into silence, not because they've forgotten you, but because they've surrendered to the truth. They can't solve you. They can't own you. They can't outweight you. You've outlasted their patience, outmaneuvered their strategies, outshone their masks. And now, instead of trying to box you in, they start building distance. Not because you're irrelevant, but because you're untouchable. They begin advising others quietly. Be careful with this one. They start citing you as an example of unpredictability, of strength, of composure. They start using your name as a cautionary tale. And that's when you've moved from mystery to myth. Without ever needing the word. What's left for you is awareness. You've walked through all of this without noticing the tremors you caused. But now you can see it. Now you understand what your two hidden traits have done. You've seen how high-profile people have reshaped their behavior around you. You've watched obsession collapse. You've watched authority become dominance. You've watched restraint become timing. And timing, now, is yours. With this awareness, you no longer simply unsettle powerful people. You direct them. You become the compass they follow, even when they think they're avoiding you. That's the final stage, when the ones who tried to study you end up orbiting you instead. This is not a call to arrogance. It's a revelation of position. You didn't ask for this. You didn't scheme for it. It emerged because you built traits no one can counterfeit. And that's why the elite respect you and fear you in equal measure. Respect because they recognize the steel in you. Fear because they know it cannot be bent. These two traits, your hidden authority and your unshakable restraint, have become the silent pillars of a reputation they cannot ignore. And now, as you step forward, you're not just the subject of their obsession. You're the proof of their limits. You're the reminder that power built on perception collapses before power built on essence. So when you move into the next chapter of your life, remember this moment. Remember how they watched you, tried to decode you, failed, and then built a legend around you. Remember how your two hidden traits carried you through every test without you even noticing. Remember that you don't need their approval to stand, and you don't need their traps to sharpen. You've already done it. You've already become the person they hoped you would never meet. And now that you know, you won't just unsettle them. You'll lead them, whether they admit it or not. Because authority became dominance. Restraint became timing. Obsession became collapse. And collapse became the foundation of your rise. That is why this elite figure was intrigued. That is why high-profile people respect and fear you. Not because of titles, not because of noise, but because of two hidden traits you carried in silence until this moment. You don't even notice how powerful you are yet. But they do. And that's the difference. They've already adjusted to your presence. They've already built stories about you. They've already surrendered to the influence you never asked for. Now it's time for you to see what they've seen all along. This is the end of their analysis and the beginning of your awareness. And with awareness, those two hidden traits become something even more dangerous, deliberate. Once they're deliberate, they're unstoppable. And once they're unstoppable, no high-profile figure can do anything but respect and fear the person you've always been.